Finally, President Roosevelt looks at Marshall and says, George, what do you think? And Marshall says, well, Mr. President, I'm very sorry, but I think it's a very bad plan. The room got silent. And Marshall explained why. He explained to him that he felt a more balanced development of the U.S. military in conjunction with supporting foreign efforts would be far better. But as he's walking out of that room, one of Marshall's colleagues whispers in George's ear, says, George, it's been nice knowing you in Washington, but your days are going to be very limited. Well, it's funny. The exact opposite happened to this man who had, in so many situations, had the courage to speak up. He hated politics. He felt like it was, just detracted from the real purpose of what he was called to do. And so he oftentimes said things that he just knew needed to be said. He was the exact opposite of political correctness. So Marshall gets selected by Roosevelt to be his U.S. Army Chief of Staff heading into the most epic time from a military perspective for us, the battle we fought on two fronts. So Marshall comes in and he inherits an army of about 200,000 enlisted men. By 1945, that army grows to 8 million. You talk about corporate growth. Think 200,000 to 8 million in just a little over 5 years. So you can imagine the logistical changes that had to occur to equip that army to do what it did. Marshall realizes very, very quickly there's a lot of dead weight in the military. Promotion system that was based primarily on seniority. So he makes some big changes in moving from a seniority-based system to one based on merit. He pushes out of positions over 600 senior military officers coming into World War II. Again, totally focused on the mission and purpose. And he knew if we kept a lot of this dead weight around, it just wasn't going to be a good thing. By doing that, he makes way for some of the names that you will recognize. Some people he put in key positions, like George Patton, like Dwight David Eisenhower. Peter Drucker, the father of all modern management theory, did a lot of study on Marshall. He said he was the greatest selector of talent who ever lived. His ability to identify talent and put people in the right roles, which is a great job as a leader. We could talk a lot about Marshall. Time Magazine Man of the Year. People said, he won the war. Well, he probably got more credit in some sense than he deserved. But I do think that he was a unique leader for a certain time. And here's the part that I most admire about him. A man of great power, a man of great influence, and yet a man of also great humility. C.S. Lewis, my favorite quote about humility, says, humility is not thinking less of yourself, it's just thinking of yourself less. And it's the idea behind, it's not all about me. And I think many great things we say about our next generation, millennials, whatever. But the one thing we seem to have lost in our country is this idea that it's not all about me. There's a wonderful book out called The Road to Character by David Brooks, the New York Times columnist, and he cites in there a Gallup poll in 1950. High school seniors were asked, do you think you're special? 12% of them said in 1950, I think I'm special. They did the same survey in 2005. You can imagine the results. Do you think you're special? In 2005, the answer was close to 80%. Marshall is indicative of a group of people who realized it wasn't about them, and so his humility. The story I like to tell about Marshall's humility is Marshall could have had the job had he wanted it to be the Supreme Allied Commander at D-Day. It was a job he was qualified for. It was a job that was his had he politicked for it. But he didn't get it. And the job went to Dwight Eisenhower, in part because Roosevelt wanted to keep Marshall close to him in Washington. But he didn't get the job. And we've all been in situations where we didn't get that promotion. We didn't get the job we think we should have gotten. And so Marshall didn't get that job, and it had to be somewhat, frustrating for him at that point in his career. Not only did he not get it, but he was also told to notify the Allied powers, particularly Joseph Stalin in this case, who got the job. So he has to write the telegram that Roosevelt signs that gets sent to Joseph Stalin to let him know that Dwight Eisenhower got selected. He sends the telegram, but what he does with the telegram after he sent it, to me, is what's most impressive. I know what I would have been inclined to do. Toss it to the side, not want to think about my competitor, my peer getting a job. But Marshall saved it. He saved it for Eisenhower and gave it to him. He said, I thought you might like to have this. And in that moment, I think it demonstrated so much about the man. He had this deep sense of honor and integrity about him. Biographers about him say we've searched high and low for the scandal, for the moral issue, whatever it is, and it's not there. He's been dead for over 50 years, they're not going to find it, right? George Cabot Marshall, a great, great leader who understood what it was to be a part of something bigger than himself. You won't find his memoirs published anywhere. We can't get a president out of office before people are writing their memoirs. They're writing them while they're in office. His response when he was offered a significant sum of money while he was in the role to write it, to take notes on his memoirs, his response was, I would never do that. If I did that, it might cause me to take my eye off the real purpose of the reason I'm here, which was victory. And so he never did that. And then in his death, shortly before he died, he wrote out his funeral wishes. He could have been buried in the rotunda. He could have had a ceremony in the rotunda at the Capitol. He could have been marched through the streets of Washington for all he did. He said, give me a simple soldier's burial. Family only. Please don't make a big fuss. The humility of a great leader. The focus of a great leader. I hope you have a better appreciation for Marshall. If I had time, I'd tell you about another great leader from the Vietnam War. We don't have time to talk about Hal Moore. Another day, another topic. Have me back sometime when you got more time. So let me close. If you go to that wrap-up slide, the very last slide, yes, we'll do that. So let me close with this. And, I get asked a lot of times, what's the difference between a manager and a leader? And a lot of the companies we work with, from Fortune 5 to Fortune 500 companies, they say we've got a lot of managers. We don't have enough leaders. Managers are people who have people who report to them. Leaders are people who have others who follow them. A leader is someone that someone else is willing to follow. So I'll close with this story, which I think is my favorite story about Abraham Lincoln, and it kind of is the essence of leadership. Abraham Lincoln was in Congress in Illinois, beginning to form his own thoughts and his own views about slavery. He heard about a slave auction that was happening in a nearby city. He wanted to go see it for himself. So he goes to the city and he begins to see the slave auction, and he's so moved by what he sees that he begins to bid on purchasing a young slave girl, very, very young. And he's just so moved that she's being auctioned that he takes his own money. He was not a man of wealth, and begins to bid on her, and eventually he wins her. And so they bring the young girl to him at the end of the auction, and very quickly he looks at the young girl and he says, young lady, you're free to go. And she doesn't understand what he's saying. It's not something that registered with her. She never experienced freedom. He says it again, young lady, you're free to go. She's still not getting it. Finally gets down, it's 6'4" frame, he gets down on one knee, looks her right in the eye, and he says, young lady, you can go anywhere you want to go. You can follow anybody you want to follow. And then she got it. And she says, well, in that case, sir, I want to follow you. And I love that story because from a public servant standpoint, Lincoln was the ultimate public servant leader. He sacrificed so much for this country, and that leadership style was magnetic. It's why more books have been written about him than any other president. It's why we talk about him today, and I think he was truly a transcendent leader. But to close on that, in a Christian audience, you don't have to make a big leap to understand the gospel message in that story. The greatest leader who ever lived was Jesus Christ. We can talk about human leaders all we want, but Jesus Christ took 12 unlikely businessmen, if you will, and changed the course of history. They were not the brightest of the bright group that he got, but he changed the course of history. And the essence of that was his own servant leadership, which caused him to give his life completely and fully away for us. And that, to me, is the essence of what we all believe. That is the gospel message that is so magnetic, that a God would send his Son, that he loves so dearly. He gave his life for us. And we want to follow that. And that's why we stand here today as Christians. So, leadership matters. Whether it's your business, your church, your family, or whatever, it all comes back, it seems to come back to leadership. Well-run families, well-run organizations, all comes back to leaders. I hope you heard something today that brings inspiration to you, that encourages you, and thank you for what you do.
Thank you, Mike. I appreciate your willingness to come for the second week in a row and talk to our group. And I appreciate all of you folks being here. My name is William Pro. I'm from Spartanburg. I run a company in Spartanburg. And I'm just excited to have you guys here with us today. We've been doing this for a long time as partners. We've been working for years trying to get our folks in our area working together, figuring out how we can make a difference in our community, figuring out how we can make a difference for the kingdom of Christ. And guys, we got some serious problems in this country, and it's because of lack of leadership. Because we're not, you and I aren't the leaders we are. So we come to these events and we try to learn how to be better leaders, so we can do a better job, so we can make a difference in our community. And if you come to these Christian chambers, and I hope you pray you will, because I hope you'll come back and I hope you'll bring your friends. We have so many people that we have to open all these rooms. Get the Christian businessmen in Greenville County here working together trying to make a difference. We want you to be a part of that. I promise you this, we'll always have good speakers. And we're going to do some basic things in this meeting that's going to, and I think you're going to enjoy it. It's going to, you always think about getting some bang for your buck. You're going to hear from some great speakers like Mike who will teach you things about leadership. That's something I tell my leaders. I want leadership principles taught. We're going to learn how to network a little bit better. And we're going to learn my passion for business is teaching other people how to integrate your faith and work. How to be better at what you do and make a difference in your ministry, which is your business, which is what God calls you to do. Okay? He gave you that business for a purpose. And He expects you to make a difference in whatever you do and say and a part of it. Next month, we got one of my heroes. Actually, I got two of them here. Don Wilson and Chibbaro. Two guys I've been meeting with for almost 15 years now. And we reason together how to encourage each other to run our businesses for Christ. That's what we do. And we compare notes. We work together. We learn from each other. And Kip's going to be here next month, and he's going to be our guest speaker. And I'm going to ask Kip to explain to you how he runs his company for Christ. And give you a picture of what it could look like. Every company's different. Every situation's different. You got one-man companies, two-man companies, and 100-man companies. Everybody's circumstances are a little bit different. The principles are all the same. So we got to learn how to make a great impact with what God's given us. I told Griffin the other day that I'm in the fourth quarter. I don't have a lot of time left. And I want to make a difference. And I think a lot of you guys, some of you guys look pretty good. You're not still in the first or second quarter. Guys, let me tell you something. You'll hit the fourth quarter before you know it. And you may think getting there is tough, but when you get there and you get your company where you want it to be, what do you let? And I heard a guy once say, you can't take all this stuff. Let me tell you what you can take. You can take your children. You can take your family. You can impact people. And you can make a difference. Now here's the problem. This meeting is more than just about business. I want us to engage in a process. It's a hard process. It's something bigger than anyone in this room. I want to take South Carolina back to Christ. I want to be part of a movement. I want to be a part of something that's bigger than me. I want something that's bigger than all of us put together. That only God can do. And I'm sure you, if we pull that off, He's going to get the credit for it. Because guys, we've got to take South Carolina back to Christ. We have lost our voice. We have lost our ability to make a difference. Let me tell you what ticks me off. There's a lot of things that tick me off. I don't talk about all of it. But I was at a ball game the other night. 89,000 people. And I got this guy got up to pray for our football game. I'm not going to mention it on the But you know what disappoints me? They're not allowed to pray in the name of Jesus. Guys, that's a shame. That is a shame. And it's our fault. Let me tell you, this is the United States. And we shouldn't have to apologize to the world because we're a Christian nation. I told my wife this the other day, when I go to Russia, I adapt to their culture. Whatever they do, I respect. When I go to Africa on a mission trip, I do the same thing. It doesn't matter where I go. I respect where I go and the people I go to visit. I don't expect them to act like Americans. And I should not have to apologize for asking people to respect the fact this is a Christian nation. And we should not have to apologize for being Christian and stand up and pray in the name of Jesus Christ. Because our country was founded on Christ. And we shouldn't have to apologize. But we do. You know why we do? Because we allow it to happen. Because we're not a voice for Christ. We're not standing up and saying, enough is enough. We're not doing what it takes to make a difference. And let me tell you what I think we're doing wrong. We're not united. We're not working together. We don't even understand the concept. If we're going to fix things, guys, we got to do that. We got to do three major things. We got to be able to communicate. We got to be able to educate. And we got to be able to motivate. And our pastors have got to be able to communicate, educate, and motivate. And we got to have a tool to get that done. Now here's my plan. Here's what I think God's called us to do. We're going to plant Christian chambers all over the state. This is the first meeting of the Greenville Christian Chamber. And I expect it to be twice this size next month. That means you got to bring 2 people. That would be pretty nice. Construction happens, we don't get beat up. We can grow this thing if you will grow. If you will be determined to bring somebody else next month to hear one of the greatest speakers, next to my Chibbaro, and you will have to do it. Okay? Now, we're going to start in January, February. We're going to start our next chamber of commerce. We're going to go to Charleston, Rock Hill, and Anderson. Before you know it, we'll have the whole state around. The Christian visiting ministries who don't give a rip what the world thinks. We're going to stand for Christ. We're going to do what's right. And we're going to stand together. I've asked one of my friends, Walter, don't you ask where they want to do this? I want you to tell them from another perspective. Walter's a pastor friend of mine from Spartanburg, and I've never heard anybody say to you better. We've got to make some changes. We've got to do some things different. Me and him were, I met him the first time at a rally in Spartanburg called Shanty Jesus. And I don't know if he can repeat
I seriously, I just don't believe lightning strike twice in the same place. So thank you, William. We met a month ago, and he's been intentional about being in a relationship with me. And if we're going to make a difference in the state, you're going to have to be intentional with getting to know people who don't look like you. We're going to have to divide and remove all of these lines of racism, socialism, and religion, and we got to get back to what Christ wants us to do. I think there are 2 great motivators in our lives. That's pain and passion. Pain and passion. If it hurt bad enough and long enough, you do something about it. And if you're passionate about it, nobody has to motivate you about it. On our way over here, I asked William, I said, man, where does your passion come from? Where does your passion come from? Because you can't talk to this man for a very long time without him talking about unity and bringing this state back together and winning for Christ. I believe the reason why our country is in the condition that it is because our moral fiber is just gone. You know, there are third world countries that laugh at us. When we as Americans can sit and allow and say, hey, it's all right for 2 rugged men to kiss in the mouth. I hope you ate, because that made me sick too. But think about that. We were the moral conscience for the entire world. But now we're not angry enough. And I believe as Christians, we need to get some righteous anger in us again and stop sitting back and allowing the world to do whatever it wants to do and act like we actually have Christ on our side. We already won. We ought to act like we have the victory. We don't have to fight for victory. We fight from victory. But you got to get angry enough that you got to be like Christ. You got to come into some situations that's not godly, and you got to kick some chairs over. You got to take your belt off. You got to beat some folk. Because listen, I know you want to be humble. I know you want to be humble. But I've learned that humility is not allowing people to walk over what we believe and our morals. Humility is power under control. And there is a time for you to rise up and say, not anymore. No, this is not going to happen. Because the thing is, when we do die, what if this was your last 24 hours? What if this your last 24 hours? What would be important to you? I guarantee it would not be how many employees you had, what car you drove, what house you live in. It would be the impact you made on your family and in this world. Sometimes we spend all of our lives on secondary things. And so we have a chance now to come together. I believe it's going to happen when the business sector come and unite with the church. And when that partnership happens, and we realize that it does not matter if I'm a Republican or if I'm a Democrat. The dividing thing is religion, but we got to learn to remove that out of the way and say, listen, it doesn't matter. You can be a Republican, you can be a Democrat, you can be black, you can be white, you can be yellow, brown. Do you know Jesus Christ? And I think when we get back to that, we will be able to make a difference. Listen, my heart goes out because I know God is looking at us. And I had to admit to myself, and God broke my heart, that I was not doing enough as a believer. Not as a pastor, but as a believer. So I ask you the question, what have you sacrificed for the kingdom? What answer will you give when you stand before your Maker? What answer will you give if he asks you, what did you sacrifice for me? I know you sacrifice for your company. We all do it. But what have you sacrificed for the kingdom? I'm in the fourth quarter too. I'm in the top of the fourth quarter. I'm in the top of the fourth quarter. And you know what? This fight that I'm in is not about me now.
That's right.
I have 4 children. And I want to leave them America that they can be proud of. And if we don't do something about it, 20 years from now, America is not going to look like America. We need to rise up and realize that God has given us this country as believers, and we need to have the courage to take it back. And don't be ashamed. Don't be ashamed. I'm going to sit down because I've talked too long. I was at the flea market Saturday, and a guy, he had a booth, a prayer booth, and he was just preaching. And somebody actually went and got a police officer and made him shut the booth down because they said he was preaching against homosexuality. Have America come to this place where everybody else get to talk about their stuff? Everybody else can put their belief on the forefront, but as believers, we got to be silent, hidden in our churches. Well, the devil is a liar. If you won't tell it, I'll tell it. There's going to be a Walter, there's going to be a William, there's going to be a Bob, there's going to be a June, whoever. It takes all of us opening up our mouth and saying, not anymore. This country belongs to God, and we're going to live for God, and we're going to make a country that God will be proud of, and he will get the glory out of it.